Okay. All right. Let's get this party started. Welcome everyone to the first ever PSIA Fireside Chat. We have lined up a pretty good of number of distinguished speakers for tonight. I am your host, Alan Tan, and this is the first event that we'll be having for PSIA. So our topic for tonight is about business ideas and market opportunities. And as you can see, we've lined up some pretty good speakers, not only the best minds, but also some ravishing gentlemen to share their ideas. So it's gonna be an exciting topic. They are some of the distinguished people from the Asia Pacific region. So we'll be hearing from them, sharing the ideas about startups in each of their own countries, and hopefully, we can pick up a lot of new ideas, especially at this time of the pandemic. So the PSIA Fireside Chat is a series of discussions that we're gonna talk about relevant topics about the software industry. This is the first episode that we'll be having. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be lining up um, different topics and discussions. We'll be inviting some of the subject matter experts to share about their ideas and thoughts about some topics that we find relevant. So if you have topics or suggestions or comments about um, future events that we'll be having, please feel free to send email to PSIA, the secretariat at psia.org.ph. We'll definitely be needing more inputs from our viewers. Also, just an announcement. Next week, we'll be having the 8th SoftCon. So this is an annual software conference organized by PSIA. But at this time of the year, we'll be doing this online. So it will be from December 7 to 11. If you're interested, feel free to join. Register at there. It's posted on the page www.softcon.ph. So, without further ado, let's get the ball rolling. I'm starting off with our first panelist for tonight, Mr. Warren Liu. Warren is the CEO of Designs.ai under the Imagine Group. He's doing multiple roles in multiple companies. So he's a very busy person. We're lucky to have him tonight. In case you don't know him, he used to run Magic program, and I'm sure a lot of the startups out there are familiar with the Magic. It's a Malaysian government assisted program for startups, and he was the one who led the program. I know a couple of friends of mine here from Philippines who actually undergone that program. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Warren Liu.
Hello, everybody.
So Warren, feel free to start off just telling us about what are your thoughts about um, business ideas at this time of the year. Where do you find them, and what's good, what's bad?
Okay, maybe I'll just start by giving a bit of context about where I am working now in order to add a little bit of color to the ideas that I'll bring forth then. So essentially, I'm the CEO of Designs.ai, which is a platform that uses AI for content creation. You can create logos, you can create banners, you can create videos, all within a tool, right? But in the grand scheme of things, I am also a vice president at Imagine, which is one of the largest creative ecosystems globally, and we compete against a company like Adobe. So we sell stock content through one of our websites called 123RF. We also own one of the world's largest online photo editors called Pixlr. So to answer your question, Alan, in terms of where I see the opportunities, most of the opportunities I see, will be within the context of the industry that I'm in, where it's cloud first, where it's SaaS first, and then where it's a lot about empowering small, medium businesses and also enterprises and individuals and startups to actually go online. I think the reason why I would talk about it is because in the industry that I'm in, it's basically a $30 billion total addressable market industry. This is the same industry, same market which Adobe is playing into, which Canva is playing into as well. For your context, Adobe is probably the third or fourth largest enterprise software company in the world now. Their market cap is roughly about $225 billion. Canva is roughly about $6 billion in valuation right now, and you've got many people working for Canva in the Philippines too, right? So where I see opportunity is really cloud first, and anything that will empower small medium businesses, and it's really about helping them cut costs and cut time in terms of running their day-to-day operations. Whether we're talking about design, whether we're talking about payroll, whether we're talking about payments, or whether we're talking about accounting, it's all about SMB empowerment. That's why you see a company like Shopify being the most valuable company in Canada, right? Or you see Slack being sold for $20 billion, even though it's still making a loss of $400 million a year, right? Or companies like Mailchimp and GetResponse or SurveyMonkey doing very well because it's all about small business empowerment. Okay, so I think that's a brief overview, but we can delve more into it in the Q&A section. So I'll pass it over to the rest on the panel.
Right. Thanks, Warren. Let's move on. Next speaker is the founder of Silicon Valley HQ. So Chris has been a seasoned entrepreneur doing lots of several startups back, I guess, in New York and the Silicon Valley. He's also an investor and is an advisor to more than 10 startups in the Silicon Valley. So we'll definitely learn a lot about Silicon Valley and probably how's life there in Australia. So let's welcome Mr. Chris Peralta. Hey, Chris. So how is it in Australia? Like, what's the startup scene there? And, having been to Philippines, what do you think would be relevant to Philippines from startups in Australia?
Thanks for having me, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So I only moved back here a year ago, so I'm getting to know the startup ecosystem in Australia. I'm actually originally Filipino, even though I don't sound it. I grew up in Australia, but I was born in the Philippines. But I've been in Silicon Valley for the last 11 years, New York for 4, and Singapore for 6. So I am just getting to know the ecosystem here. But there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in every country around the world. There's local problems, there's global problems, there's lots of problems. So life after COVID is going to be very interesting. There's a lot of digitization, as you know, of everything. I'm supporting African startups. We had a webinar an hour and a half ago. One startup is digitizing tourism, right? And one of the startups has a virtual zoo concept. So they're a 4th generation farmer, and they're providing drone footage of animals on their farm, right? So you're able to visit sort of a zoo, but like animals, in the real animals with personalities. They're personalized, they're real animals, and you're able to do it all virtually. So it's going to be very interesting what it's going to be like online. Silicon Valley headquarters, which is my company, and I've got a few other companies, is an online mentorship platform. So when I was in the Valley, I was running hundreds of programs for 20 countries around the world. And I mentored like 500 plus startups in the Valley. I've done a lot of different things. And so I love helping startups. And so 3-4 years ago, I decided to create my own platform. So I started to build it 2 years ago, and it's called Silicon Valley Headquarters. It's an online platform connecting people to experts in Silicon Valley, because that's where my connectivity is. So we have 150 mentors, matter experts on the platform. We have programs, webinars, insights, templates, and a whole bunch of different things. So that's a bit of background of what I do.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. We'll delve a bit more about that in a while, but first let's introduce our third panelist for tonight, Mr. Bobby Liu. a good friend of mine, and also he runs Founder Institute in Vietnam, and so has been successful running it in the Topica program. So why don't you share us about your experience, running or look how do startups look for ideas, especially I guess at this time of the year, because how we used to do it before might be different now that we're in the middle of pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bobby Liu.
Okay. Yeah, Alan, thank you very much for inviting me to your webinar or fireside. Yes, first and foremost, I've been really fortunate, at least in this period of pandemic, and to be living in Vietnam, and I have been here since March this year. So as I think as you all know, Vietnam is one of the few countries that actually contain the pandemic or the virus, spread of the virus, fairly well. So yeah, so I consider myself really fortunate in that sense. And along the way, and having been here for such a long, uninterrupted period of time, I do see a lot of, changes, really interesting. Um, and okay, first let me touch on the FI. So we've been running the FI program since 2011, and so far have put out more than 80 startups into the market, with probably 35% of the startups after our program have gone on to raise funding and legitimately becoming a startup or a business, right? So we are very happy to be doing that, to be contributing to this whole nascent sector or ecosystem in Vietnam. So that's pretty exciting. This year we're supposed to launch our program sometime fourth quarter this year, but then it got delayed through some negotiation that eventually didn't really happen. So most likely our batch number 8 will be in the first half of next year, or hopefully first quarter of next year. So we are really looking forward to it, and it will be online, which is I think a huge challenge for a lot of people. Where I think previously FIs, as you know, Alan, has always been an offline program, and one of the virtues of the FI program is the close proximity of the founders that we bring into the program to communicate and to connect with the kind of top ranked mentors that we are able to bring into the program. So I think this will be kind of challenging to see how that can be replicated, or any downfall of doing an online program can be hugely mitigated. So let's see what happens with that. In terms of business opportunity, what I've noticed is that first and foremost, let me ask the question, right? How many people do you need to take for how many people does an SME need to take to change the light bulb, right? So the answer will be 5, right? Because one will be holding the light bulb, and the other 4 cousins of the owner will be turning the chair to change the light bulb, right? And I think this period of pandemic realized that you can actually digitize, right? So that's something that Chris mentioned earlier, and that's something that probably and Warren mentioned earlier, right? So even if I use if I refer to what Warren said about empowering people, and even as a solopreneur, for example, you are still an SME. So I think that the fact that this period of time actually has shown us how we can actually take advantage of digitization, and how a lot of people are providing great platforms at a B2B level or B2B2C level. There are a lot of businesses, small businesses, and even all the mom and pop shop. As you can see from Indonesia, the warungs, for example, how they've actually adopted technology and be able to scale their business, to unprecedented heights. So I think this time round, if anything else, if there's a huge pocket of opportunity, then I think it is the I guess the positivity of a B2B business within the SME market, which was missing prior to this pandemic period.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. So still SME. SME and B2B. I guess that's one thing that we should be looking into. So for our online viewers, you may post your questions or comments on the Facebook chat, and we should be able to see that. So if you have any questions to our panelists for tonight, please feel free to send in your the chat page, and we'll be talking about that. But just to kick off the discussions, given the current conditions, maybe this one's for you, Warren. It's like how you're seeing it in Malaysia, because I know we have similar number of new cases happening every day. I guess the lockdown would be quite similar also. But are there any actually opportunities that we can look into right now, given where we are and the limit?
To be honest with you, I don't think it's country specific because this COVID situation is kind of like a common denominator across all countries, right? No matter which country you're in, except for maybe Vietnam or a few other countries, in general, everyone is on social distancing and everybody is working from home. And so, what this has done is that it has created this massive surge in terms of a momentum to go online. It's the same for Malaysia, it's the same for Philippines, it's the same for Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia or Angola or Egypt, right? Where mobile payments has become a lot more popular and prevalent over the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months in comparison to a year or two ago. The whole path has been accelerated. More and more businesses are forced to actually go online, so food delivery, etc., etc. But I think the first wave is mostly around the consumer stuff because this is what the mass market would need. How do I consume food online? How do I communicate online? How do I order a ride online? How do I shop online? Right? This is kind of like the first generation of the basic needs. But by going forward, as the start does settle, I think that the main opportunity still resides within how do you actually make it possible for businesses to be even more efficient, right? As the supply chains become more and more integrated, right? As the Shopees and Lazadas and Alibabas on Amazons of the world, we have to streamline, the cost of doing business and to reduce the cost, right? Where else can IT companies or tech companies like ours or yours actually fit into the value chain, right? Because a lot of things are getting disintermediated right now, right? I think we are at this stage where if you look back, in terms of how we are living our lives now in comparison to 10 years ago, we are already seeing a lot of differences. 10 years ago, most of us are probably not on Waze or Google Maps or on WhatsApp or on Slack or on or Hangouts or Zoom. Like most of us are not on instantaneous chat or have that much of an active social media presence with the ability to reach out to millions of users. As long as we have good content. But I think back to the point, the opportunities for us to really position for right now is the next phase beyond the consumer side. What would be the SaaS solutions, right, or the business solutions from a technology perspective? Where I think in the past, traditionally, in terms of software servicing, money has always been within the enterprises because that's where they have the money to spend, right? SMBs or small businesses will be the long tail where the value is not really there to merit the time for someone to fully serve the person or the customer. But with the advent of technology and a lot of automation, that's where a lot of things are becoming more and more self-serve, right? Whereas the basket size will increase more and more. And I think this is where the sweet spot really is, where software by itself is really the compounding factor. So to answer your question, Alan, I wouldn't say this opportunity is valid for Malaysia alone. I would say the goal rush right now is really how do you actually have a piece of software that will really empower businesses which are still underserved. And a product like this, it's not just a local solution, but it's a global solution, right? From cybersecurity or simple email setup or account management like Zoho or Deskera, right? Payroll management, tax calculations, customer outreach automation, email generation, etc., etc.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. But on the other hand, like Bobby, in FI we used to teach our founders, like, you go out of the building, look for ideas, but this time we can't really go out, or So how are you doing it now, or any ideas or tips?
So for me, right, how do I look for such ideas? I read a lot. I'm on social media a lot, right? And it's really interesting to see, what will be the nascent ideas that will come up from the different markets, right? Okay, so I think, what will be useful is that you choose to specialize in a particular industry or particular segment. But in my case, right, I'm operating within the creative industry. And by just focusing on the creative industry, I will be able to at least keep track of what's new, in terms of trends, what will be the latest AI stuff that's on the cutting edge. And because the community is not that big, it's not that difficult for me to reach out to those folks who are doing cutting edge stuff or are interesting partners for me via email, via Twitter, or via LinkedIn, or even via Facebook, right? So there are a few ways. I'll just summarize it by saying, read out the news, follow the news very closely. Do not be afraid to actually reach out via email or pick up the phone. You have to try to get in touch with those who are at the forefront within the industry that you are expert in. And then, build from there, whether we're talking about deal making or insight sharing, or recycling of ideas to see what else can be innovated, based on different inspiration. So, but I think the key point is, choose a particular industry that you are well versed in, and you know the workings, so that at least you can know what exactly is cutting edge development, or what exactly is something that's a little bit off trend.
Bobby, anything you want to add based on what you've experienced over there?
Okay, so if you say narrow it down to just the startup ecosystem, then I think idea generation has never been the issue, right? The issue is really more of the execution of it, right? And previously, you've got great ideas as aside a lot of people, the ecosystem, and all that stuff, and then you actually find the problem in terms of execution, and the execution in itself also consists of market fit and market adaptability, right? But what I'm seeing this period of time is that it's not so much as the new idea. I think it's more of people looking into, it could even be current popular sectors, right? For example, travel, right? And I use travel as an example because I'm actually at my friend's office, and we're talking about this thing that he wants to expand out of his current business, which is related to fintech. We've been talking about this for the last couple of months, and it kind of excited me because I think previously Southeast Asia has been probably net adopter of so-called ideas from Silicon Valley, or from the West, and then you kind of try to clone it, and hopefully we are able to find market fit. I think along the way, somehow you look at it, I think call it 10 years, right? So call it 10 years that the ecosystem has somewhat mature. I think this is a time where I see a lot of companies or even startup founders are looking more deeply into the problems, right? For example, how do you really localize certain things? How do you pick the trend? How do you reinvent travel? Based on younger generation, or the new trends of travel, or the improving economy. And I think that's the same. And I will give you an example of a startup from Malaysia, Warren. So previously they were very focused in the real estate market in Malaysia. And I think this whole pandemic, and also probably because they joined the Google startup program, they started thinking about how their platform can be applied in similar industry elsewhere, which previously even though they've thought about it, but it was just simply a thought. It wasn't something to the point whereby how do they execute it, right? So fortunately, I had some friends in Vietnam that I was able to introduce to them, and I see that being pushed forward, right? How do you really look at it and say, all right, what, I'm creating software products. Where else can I put my products and services out in the market? I think to a large extent, I think in the US, and Chris probably would agree as well, or disagree if you may, that in the US no matter what kind of new idea that you have, there's actually a large enough local population to adopt it before, and you don't even need to say anything about going overseas. Whereas Southeast Asia, I think if you look at local market point of view, then our market is actually quite small, and then to expand to another country is actually really, really difficult. So in that sense, it's something that I think a lot of tech guys are thinking from a solution standpoint, and how do they, how are they able to offer what they're doing, in a rather borderless way, instead of
Yeah.
local, even though hyper local is still very important, at least in the near term.
I just wanted to add, I agree with Bobby. I think execution is key. Right now, yes, there's a pandemic, but there's a lot of opportunity. I'm doing tons of businesses right now, but I think it depends on the person's situation, because some may need to pay the bills, so it's not as easy as starting a new business. They need money, week by week. So maybe some opportunities where they need to hustle, some affiliate programs, doing stuff on Canva, or tasks, whatever. There's opportunities there, but other times people have the flexibility to explore new ideas. Now, I also believe, Warren mentioned about it, matter expertise, and typically I would say yes. Focus on what you're really good at, and then use that as your leverage, your superpower. But this pandemic has also presented opportunity for everyone to think outside the box, right? Because we're all online, right? We're all in the same level playing field. So I'll give you a few examples of some ideas that might be interesting. One, when we think about Philippines and fintech, look at DeFi, decentralized finance, blockchain-based financial systems that modernize, currencies, payments, lending, borrowing, investing, trading, derivatives, blah, 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 and list goes on. This is a huge, new, and not many people know about it, opportunity, right? When you think about the art market, like the global art market, who's going to galleries today? No one. But look at crypto art, right? Crypto art is getting some momentum. People are creating this Picasso-like art. I'm not an artist, so apologies for any artists out there. And they're selling it, people are buying it using crypto, right? What else? A company of mine is Smart Farm Technology. Agriculture is big in Philippines. So looking at these types of technology to survey, monitor animals, livestock, security, there are smart farm solutions, SaaS. Like SaaS is an opportunity. What else? I had a few other ideas, but I think there's a lot out there. But it's all about finding something that you're interested in, and there are, I think, some opportunities that are disruptive, that are actually new, that you can leverage upon, and then at the end of the day, it's all about execution, as Bobby said.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing I've been hearing from all of you guys. Like, execution is key. It's important what your capabilities are, and so that you'll be successful in which industry you'll get into. We have a question here from Arup. It says, like, what startups have you noticed got started in the last 8 months in your market? Whoever wants to take a stab at that.
Sorry, Alan, could you repeat the question again?
What new startups have you noticed in the last 8 months in your market?
Well, to be honest with you, I have not seen anything, exciting happening in the local space in Malaysia for the last 8 months.
Down,
I don't think, a lot of, yeah. I think principally because, maybe I've not been that close to the startup space, but nonetheless, there are some times where I feel that they are on the right track, right? Again, it's on SMB empowerment. I came across a startup where they enable businesses to actually sell via WhatsApp. So they can allow independent sellers to actually create their their own stores, which can be accessed through a WhatsApp URL link.
Right.
I came across, a startup where they will help Facebook sellers to actually convert whatever they have listed as SKUs into a shop, a Facebook shop where the clients can actually buy things directly. So these are the things that I personally am a fan of in terms of empowering hundreds of thousands of independent, home-based, stay-at-home businesses that are trying to sell stuff through big platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, right?
So if we're talking of apps for the SMEs, we're talking of a large scale, right? We're talking
Not
of
necessarily
hundreds
large
of
scale.
thousands.
I think to the point of what Bobby said, right? As long as it empowers businesses, right? It doesn't what SMB doesn't have to be a large scale business. It could be even a stay at home mom selling homemade crafts
Right,
or
right.
baking stuff.
But the platform will have to be able to accommodate a large number of base users as compared to like a typical B2B app, or so
Yeah.
this would be like
Yeah,
a
exactly.
B.
But I think I don't think a lot of these people have to worry too much about infrastructure nowadays, because you can write on the platforms that you're building on, right? Whether you talk about
Right.
Facebook or whether you talk about WhatsApp. In these particular cases, right? Just like as you know, many agencies or companies actually make a living selling plugins for WordPress and Shopify, right? So similarly, as long as these are tools which will have their own niches, but will enable others on other platforms. That's also where you can actually build a very comfortable business. So
Have you guys seen?
for example,
Sorry, go ahead.
in my day job, right, I've been using a mail merge plugin for Gmail, right? It's a very simple tool that will allow me to send hundreds of emails daily for co-mailing purposes. But the guy who actually built it, is probably he is based in India, and he probably rakes in quite a healthy sum of revenue every single year, because he has found a niche. It doesn't have to be a complicated tool, but as long as it enables people to actually facilitate business better and faster, the bigger players have not fulfilled that niche yet, then it's also something they can be considered.
So have you guys noticed like trends? If 'cause since we're talking about SME, like more startups are, or more successful startups are moving towards creating platforms, or are there still startups that are doing very specific, solving specific problems?
Well, any startup, to have to build a business has to solve a problem, right? The question is, what sort of problem is it, and are the consumers or the final users willing to pay for the problem to be solved, right? And so, the yardstick that I will always ask any startup or any business to actually look into the solutions is, can my solution be at least 50% better than the alternative out there, or 50% cheaper, right? In order to really be game changing, or be a differentiator. I think where the opportunities lie, are the gaps between different parts of the value chain and different parts of the workflow. As long as the mantra states where you can help people save time, right, and save not just a few minutes, but save a significant amount of time in comparison to status quo. That is where you're going to make money.
Okay.
I,
Chris,
I see a big movement. Oh, sorry, Chris.
go ahead. Go ahead. No problem.
Okay, so if I were to observe, the Vietnam market, and also myself being, in AdTech, I see a lot of sort of micro disruption going on in this sector, whereby predominantly the more popular offline type of education is now switching to online, and then because the situation wasn't as bad, and a lot of them switched back to offline. So if I were to relate that to your usual public school, it's the same thing. So most schools were closed, and everyone had to do online study, and then schools got open, and then they went back to class, and then something else happened, and then they had to go online again. And during this, back and forth, I think what happened is, in general, I guess in education, right, or in school system, I don't want to call it education, but in the public school system. I think it shows up rather starkly that the way to go online is not optimized. I would say is quite bad, right? I think a lot of teachers, and I love them, for what they're doing, but they're not so well equipped to sort of conduct classes online, and that's a huge change. And all of a sudden, you see, platforms like LMS, become very popular. Extra media classes type of platforms, learning extra English, extra mathematics, have become more popular, right? My own younger sister, okay, and it's not a plug, is offering a tool to let online teachers collaborate, right? And which was, kind of overlooked before the pandemic, but during the pandemic it became very useful because it created that real-time instantaneous collaboration that is missing on, let's say now, StreamYard, for example, right? So things like this. So you see a lot of all this micro disruption, and it comes from a few pockets. For example, again, the current teachers in your traditional schools, okay, they have to quickly learn how to conduct and optimize the way they teach, because teaching offline to a class of 30, 40 students are very different from even teaching a class of 15 online, right? And they have to learn something from that, and they need to adopt a lot of online tools. And I can imagine, the companies that sell stickers, for example, right? Like Warren's company are doing well because, these are some of the things that, are being used actually in the normal edtech platform. Healthcare, is also another area. I think that people look at it and say, all right, how can we do even better and improve, with the time. So there are other, some big sectors within what. To me, or maybe I'm paying more attention to edtech. I just find that there's a lot of a micro disruption within edtech itself.
Okay, so we talk about fintech, we talk about edtech, healthcare. Now there are other industries where it could be disrupted. Maybe we can just go through. I have a list here. We can just go through them one by one and then see what you guys think about. Well, I guess let's try to play this game. I, yes.
Can I just add on to what
Oh
Bobby
yeah,
said?
sure. Go ahead before we go.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to echo, healthcare, obviously it's going to be big after COVID, telemedicine and other platforms. One of my companies, we have, developed a persistent hand sanitizer that's alcohol free. So, overuse of sanitizers with alcohol, we don't know what the damage it's going to be on our skin. So we're bringing out a persistent
Try
sanitizer.
the skin.
So these are the things that people are thinking of. There seems to be pandemic funds as well, like these COVID pandemic funds that are coming out to support. There you go. Yeah. And how many times do you use it every day and you're putting alcohol on your hands and it's damaging your skin? The other thing is I've seen some social responsibility funds cropping up as well. Bezos announced his 10 billion Earth Fund. I did a virtual pitch for startups, and there was a startup called Trace doing a carbon footprint, and they raise money to offset your carbon footprint, and then they plant a tree in the forest. So there's some really innovative stuff beyond the usual healthcare, remote working, Zoom's just gone crazy, education online, tools are going crazy. Like there are the norms, but I think for entrepreneurs, what you have to look at is go beyond what you read online, right? You have to feel on the ground. You have to get, on the ground of what's happening, see what's sort of spiking in different industries, different areas. Like I'm saying, like explore crypto art if you're an artist. Art galleries can go online, digitize online, and there's tons of different tools. So yeah, I just wanted to add those.
Yeah, I
those
just
things.
wonder how you go on the ground, especially if you're in healthcare. Does that mean you have to go to the hospital and expose yourself and get familiarized, or how do
No,
you
yeah,
think
no.
that
There's events online. I go to Eventbrite to post my events that I do. through these conversations, you learn from, participants as well, right? On social media, research, there's like, you could just go online to find out what are the trends and then see what's sort of like different than the norm, right? That not everyone's in and exploring, and then it might take your fancy, right? So no, there's a lot of opportunities, and also just continue to build your network, right? The more people you talk to, the more ideas it opens up.
Yep.
The more people that reach out to me, I end up starting a new company all the time. It's crazy. It's annoying as well for my wife, but there's a lot of opportunity, right? You just need to immerse yourself, do the due diligence, figure out what you're interested in that's a bit different, and then try to execute on it. You have to hustle and get it.
Okay.
I think
Right. So
I think the cost of failure is comparatively low and definitely a lot lower than before. So I think, try it. Yeah, quarantine at home anyway, working from home, you might as well just do something, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll give you an example. I just started a company, and where it's related to COVID. We're partnering with one antibody test kits. So they are qualitative test kits that do testing. And so before you go to the office or school, and we started to do some tests at schools in the US and also at some enterprises, you get a 15-minute antibody serology test. It gives you a level. It's 15 minutes. It's all approved by the government and everything. It's endorsed and sanctioned by a lab that has this CLIA certification, or sanctioned by the COVID task force in that state. And then they're tracked. They've got to download an app. They put on a wearable device, and they go in the office, and there's a bit of peace of mind, right? So we just started that. I'm not the scientists, but I partner with the scientists who are part of the COVID task force in the US, who can get to the billing, to the labs, to everything like that. So we just started that. We created a crypto platform as well, launching my mentorship platform. Like, there's a lot of opportunities to start new businesses. I think if you have the right connectivity to the matter experts, you do your own due diligence, and you know what you're there for. Like, I'm the business guy. I raise the money, I get into the channels, and I partner up with the experts that know about the COVID test kits, they know about the billing, they know about, you know what I mean? So it's, you could get it done even virtually. And these are all partners of mine in Asia, in America, in Africa, South Africa, all around the world. It's actually much easier now because everyone's on.
I need to
there's
talk to
pros
you,
and cons.
Chris, after this whole thing on the testing thing.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so let's just quickly go through. I have a list here of different industries, and just say yes or no if it's an industry that you'll be investing your money and time into, and then we'll discuss maybe the industries where everybody just say yes, so just we can share more ideas like what kind of startups they can do there. So just say yes or no. First, e-commerce.
Yes,
Uh,
but it depends.
how about you, Chris? Bobby, you're no, right, Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear what the. Can you go again?
E-commerce. E-commerce.
E-commerce.
Sorry, what do we need to do? My apologies.
If it's an
Connect.
industry you will invest your money and time into. Okay, fintech.
Yes, DeFi.
Okay, blockchain.
Yes,
I know the answer.
certain use cases.
So
How
what is
about
that?
food?
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear
Certain-
that. What is it?
Blockchain.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, food. Yeah, for
Food.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Warren. Yeah. Logistics.
Nope.
Not my area.
Yeah.
EdTech, education.
definitely.
Yeah.
Healthcare.
Definitely.
Okay, travel and leisure.
Yes. Surprisingly, yes.
And we're gonna say yes to everything, right? But at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
all about prioritization, though. If let's say for you have $1,000 to spend, right? How would you allocate the marbles to the different industries? That would at least give a little bit of a relative comparison across the different sectors, right?
Well, $1,000.
Because
So
otherwise,
Warren, $1,000, buy the crypto, right, and then split, all the 0.001 into all these
All right.
other projects, right?
Yeah,
And then Chris is going to handle for us, right?
how about IoT? Internet of Things.
Yeah.
No.
It's
I
still,
think
AI.
it all
Artificial
depends
intelligence.
on use cases. I think it depends on the use cases.
AI.
it
Yes.
also depends. It depends on the. I think you have a lot of AI development right now, but what we are still waiting to see is the productization of it, right? What kind of applications can you build on top of it? So I don't think the value is in the actual core AI itself, but rather what can you build out of it.
Okay.
Well, I
And
mean, put it this way,
co-working.
right? If somebody is able to develop an AI in a box, much like Microsoft Office in a box, right? And with a few keystrokes, I'm able to deploy AI. Yeah, that I would probably look into investing, right? But if you tell me that I'm an AI startup and all that stuff, that's going to be so long tail, and I don't think the kind of investment money that we put in is is going to be any of any significance, right? So probably if AI, you look at two pockets. Are you an industry defining platform, or are you an AI enabled platform? And then if it's
Yeah,
AI
yeah.
enabled platform, then you got to look at it and say, no matter what you're building, is that going to is that going to be so useful that it's going to grow and scale over time?
How about co-working business?
Nope.
I
Okay.
yeah,
So let's go back to the topics one by one. I think most of you said yes to fintech. So what trends are you seeing in terms of fintech that you think will be a disruptive technology?
I think that the first part that's happening in this region right now is still around payments, right? As more and more people are coming to payments. But this is just version 1.0. But once you have the base, right, that's where you start going to insurance, you start going to, more things beyond just payments and remittances. I don't think we've reached that critical mass yet, but nonetheless, you see big platforms like Grab or Gojek or some of the other platforms like Shopee Pay, making inroads into it. Um, are we seeing robo advisors taking off in this region yet? I don't think the market is educated enough to really make it mainstream yet, but the situation might change in 4 or 5 years time.
I wonder, like, if we talk of fintech, are we looking at the future where there's gonna be one big fintech company controlling all, or there'll be several
So my
startups?
view is that it's going to be fragmented by country because of the different rules and regulations. So we're not like a China or even a US where China is one big country by itself. That's why you can have two platforms dominating it, right? You've got you've got Alibaba, you've got Tencent dominating the entire payment infrastructure. Whereas operating out of Indonesia will be very different from operating out of Thailand. Operating out of Philippines will be very different from operating out of Singapore. Simply because you will have the local regulations, and not only that, you will also have the local conglomerates with ties to the different local banks making a play for it. Of course, you will expect a player like Grab or a player like Shopee to try to roll out across the entire region, but they will have their own challenges, and they will also need to compete against the local incumbents, which are already entrenched to a certain extent and could be well positioned to make a play for it. But let's see, at the end of the day, what Shopee has shown is that with money you can solve everything. They're worth about $80 billion right now, into the SCA, and that's why Grab and Gojek are actually discussing a potential merger, right? Because otherwise, CEO could have the potential to outspend, both of them.
Well,
I-
look,
Chris,
I
what do you
mean,
you wanna add?
Chris,
Yeah, DeFi. I heard from my founder in one of my companies saying that it grew 1,116% in 2020. So I'd research about that.
And
Yeah.
Bitcoin is back to what, 19,000 now?
20, I
Yeah,
think 20. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
All
Anyway,
right.
I think if it's something that reduce or optimize cross-border payment, right? Yes, it's all about payment, but cross-border payment. Obviously, right now it's in the domain of the banks, right? Intra-bank lending and so on and so forth. But then, if you can imagine, players like Grab, Gojek, Tencent, Alipay and all that stuff, or any of these, B2C gig economy, there's just so much cash in the market, and they are not really sort of taking advantage or optimizing, the available cash in the market, right? And so I think that's something that I'm sure all these players, and they're much smarter than all of us combined. I'm sure they're thinking about it, and moving forward, really, it will come down to something of a peer-to-peer type of payment, and that's when you're able to, really effect cross-border payment, and it makes it cheaper for all of us to buy and sell goods and services across. So I think that in the whole part of, if you call it fintech, I think a lot comes down to that. Is there one platform that is able to unify all this payment? Which means to say, if you really think along that way, then it's sort of all the individual players becoming the alternate banking platform.
Bobby, earlier you said yes about food tech. Any ideas? Like what keeps you excited about food?
Well, what keeps me excited, right? 3 meals a day, most of us, okay, all of us, or most of us, reducing poverty, cleaning up the environment. That in itself is already a big thing. I posted something yesterday based on this, Singapore being the first country where they are able to culture cell-based meat, which to me, in my mind, it leads to a lot of, ethical issues, right? And so yeah, so I think there's, this, sideway huge development in terms of food, simply because the world's population is supposed to grow up to maybe 2050, up to maybe 10 billion. So so imagine 3 billion more people coming, on Earth, right? Net 3 billion, by the way, coming on Earth. The kind of food consumption and all that stuff. That has to be a huge problem, regardless of whether it's for the environment or for ourselves, per se. So yeah, of course, if you talk about in current situation, there are a lot of supporting tech that can be used for food. The POS, the loyalty card system. Just to talk about the simple stuff, right? And you talk about logistics, and food delivery is actually one whole big industry in itself, right? The freezer, where you transport food. How do you reduce wastage? How do you reduce spoilage, for example? How do you move cooked food, that hotels have, to other areas of, for consumption by, let's say the homeless or the, whatever. So there are a lot of small pockets, of opportunities right there. Not necessarily simply just to make money, but a lot of things, a lot of things to disrupt.
But do you see
I was
potential to scale for food, or is this something like that's hyper local, something within the community?
I think generally, it will be hyper local. For example, I mean, if I just look into the Vietnam story again, there are a lot of micro farms, that definitely can use tech to optimize, the growth and the supply of it, right? Improve the supply, and then, because, I guess we all know that, for whatever reason, organically grown products are more expensive, but it should not be, because that's, and then, for for the bigger picture, I think that's something that a lot of agri-tech people are trying to solve. Yeah, it's not to the point of commercialization, but I think you got to look at the entire pipeline, right? Of the food chain. Forgive the pun, but the food chain to solving the problem in the food industry.
Another approach, Alan, one of my companies, StudX, if you look at the meat consumption industry, it's a $1.1 trillion industry. So what we're doing, this is in the future, we're using blockchain to authenticate or provide that provenance to ensure ethically sustainable meat from farm to fork. So there's interesting things that you can do. But don't tell anyone we're doing that.
So you're actually tracking the meat physically from production to
From farm
wherever they
to
go. Okay. All right.
So
Here's
Warren
another-
Warren will know the beef hor fun, the beef of the beef hor fun. Where does it come from?
Sorry, before?
The beef in the beef hor fun. Where did it come from?
Oh, okay, all right.
It's organically grown. Now, one of the interesting industry here for me is actually travel and leisure, because now I think it's one of the impacted industry with the pandemic. Do you have any insights about this? Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm not a travel expert. I think, it's still up in the air right now. We don't even know whether most of the airline companies are going to survive. Many of the hotels have really closed down. So I think it's a little bit too early to say. But if you just read, the reports that have been coming out from Airbnb, they're saying, this will have lasting impact to the way we really travel. So I wouldn't be able to say or comment much.
At my end, I think the only thing I can say, because I have a life science company as well. We mentioned the persistent sanitizer. We're creating an invisible shield technology to protect us. So I think we have to live with COVID and other. This is not going to be the last virus that is going to surface. So we need to figure out how to live with it. Yes, there'll be a vaccine, but it's going to take time. But we need to protect ourselves, right? So some of the devices, like if you look at your mask, a disposable mask like this, so I have one here, it's not effective. You touch a surface that has COVID, you fiddle around with the mask, it's aerosol, it's airborne, it gets in, and then you can get COVID, right? So I think the travel has to continue because people need to travel and unwind, but they need to have peace of mind. So I think we have to develop technology to support us.
Okay. So I heard like beachfront properties and resorts are cheap nowadays. I wonder if it's a good investment. Do you think like after the pandemic's like gonna pick up or something?
I have another business. I'm in real estate. We do off-market deals. I think real estate's always a good way to put your money. But again, it's find someone that knows the market where you're buying. I partner with Berkshire Hathaway and Sotheby's in the US for off-market deals. So they're the experts, right? But I would invest in real estate if I had the money.
Okay, well I think our time's almost up. Anything you want to say before we end this program? Maybe start with Bobby.
All right, to all the listeners out there. I mean, if you're thinking of an idea, all I can say is, just go do it. Like I said, the cost of failure is relatively low from at least a time when I started entrepreneurship. And there are a lot of platforms available, in market, whereby most of them are free anyways, that you're able to do and test out your and validate your idea. So what else are you going to do anyways, right? So you might as well just try it. So I think if you maximize on the opportunities that this so-called bad period of time is giving to you, then yeah, just make use of the opportunity. So yeah, and then
Right.
of course there are other factors that as what the 3 or 4 of us have mentioned, look into that, and it could be helpful.
Warren?
I think we are in a period where there's a lot of constant flux and constant change, given the input of technology to every aspect of our lives, right? So what this means is that there will be threats because of this intermediation, there'll be threats because of automation, but therein also lies the opportunity, right? Because you know that these things are happening, right? So where can you actually find the right opportunity and find the right niche to actually ride the wave? If you know that automation is going to come in for your particular industry, like telesales, services, how to actually ride on it in order to do some automation tools to improve labor efficiency and also upskill the workers, for example, right? So I think the key point is do not fight the trend, ride the trend, but adapt accordingly to it and try to do something constructive out of it.
All right, and Chris.
For the listeners, I guess, I'm running a program in January. If you want to have a look at apacvalley.com. If you refer anyone there, you can get an affiliate list, and you can I'll give you a affiliate list, and then you can make some money. Like, look for opportunities like that. Just keep hustling. There's opportunities out there. And so it's all about 1, execution. I always say to have fun, and 3, these days, you have to keep safe.
Okay. We actually have one question here, but I think we answered it already. It's from Miguel Beltran. Just any new unique business trends that are popping out right now that may cause disruption. So we touch on it, with a different industry we discussed. So with that, I'd like to close the program. We'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for your ideas and sharing your thoughts. Thank you on behalf of PSIA and to all our listeners. Thank you for listening. Watch for the upcoming program next week. We'll have another session. We'll talk more about working from home. So these are designed more for developers. How can they be more effective and while working from home? So with that, again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we'll close the
Thanks.
program. Thank you.
Keep
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.